We got a top 10 battle in the SEC on Saturday. Number 9 Ole Miss traveling to Georgia, who's number 5 in the land. The Rebels facing their toughest challenge so far. Plus, there's some history behind this when it comes to Lane Kiffin and this bunch. Searching for their first win in Athens since 1996. The good thing for Ole Miss, they're rocking an undefeated record, but coming off a close one, that 24-21 win over Washington State. As for the Dogs, they had to gut it out against Auburn there after trailing by 10 in the first half. And speaking of Kirby Smart and his crew, no stranger when it comes to the Rebels. Take a look at it. Most losses versus a single opponent. Alabama running away with it with 7 of those, but Florida and LSU, and then we find the Rebels there, giving him 2 of those over his career. All right, for more of this matchup, Chase Parham and Jordan Hill tapping in from 24/7 Sports. Before we get to this matchup, and Jordan, I'll talk to you first. Kirby and the Dogs looking to change up the identity when it comes to starting slow. What have you heard about their plan to correct that on Saturday?
Yeah, the Auburn game last weekend was more of the same for Georgia when it comes to starting slow. Fell behind 10-0, was on the verge of going down 17-0 before forcing that fumble on the goal line. And, it was kind of wild to see Georgia struggle early in that game against Auburn. It seemed like they had cleaned things up against Kentucky the week before. And when I asked about that, Kirby Smart said, we really didn't do anything different. It's not like we took a pill. It's not like we injected something. We just went out there and we executed. And I think that you look at the games where they found themselves in tough spots. They fell behind 21-7 at Tennessee, 14-0 at home against Alabama. You look at the potential of this Ole Miss offense. Georgia understands it can't start these games flat-footed, really on either side of the ball. I think it's just as important for the offense to come out, put together a productive drive, even if that means just settling for 3 points, as it is for the defense, which has been caught off guard a little bit at times, having to give up touchdowns to open games before they kind of settle in. So it's got Georgia's attention, but they understand that there's nothing really they need to do differently besides go out there and execute.
The start's really critical for Ole Miss, too, because it's Trinidad Chambliss' first road start. He's only been at home since he replaced Austin Simmons as the starting quarterback. And when you look at Chambliss and kind of what he's going to be facing in Athens, such a different environment than at home at Baltimore Stadium, I think it's really on the Ole Miss defense. They have struggled at times this season with mobile quarterbacks. Taylor Green got after them. That was a one-score game against Arkansas. And such a key for this game is going to be keeping Gunnar Stockton in the pocket, not letting him get crazy in the run game, and then finishing tackles. Last year it was a game that Ole Miss dominated for the most part in Oxford, but this is a different defensive line. This is a different front seven. That was a group that led the country in tackles for loss. They led the country in sacks. And this group has got to be a little better at finishing. They've gotten some pressure, but they haven't finished a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage. They haven't been that team. And I think that is what could calm the Ole Miss offense a little bit, is the defense to get some traction and to give them a pretty good early start and not get kind of bombed early on the road. And that's going to really, be up to that Ole Miss defense containing Gunnar Stockton and not letting him beat them with his feet.
Chase, you mentioned there when it comes to Trinidad, some of the kids, they would call it, he's been cooking lately since taking over there since, early September in that season for them. But when it comes to Lane Kiffin, he has this the ball moving a little bit for these guys. But how would they look against this Georgia defense based on what you've seen?
Well, it's going to be a different type of challenge. And Trinidad Chambliss was excellent in his first starts. He was great against LSU. There's been some Heisman buzz, even though he didn't start the first 2 games. But he really struggled against Washington State last week. The Cougars are not very good. They were in the game, having the ball in the last minute with a chance to go down the field. They didn't do that. Ole Miss did pull it out to get 6-0. But Chambliss, despite the stats being okay, missed a lot of reads, didn't connect on some balls down the field. It's kind of his shakiest performance to date. And now I think for him, it's going to be about how he moves in the pocket. Look, he gives Ole Miss that +1 of the run game. He's a really elusive runner. He can get out and get around the edges. He can get inside. They do a lot of power quarterback things. And then Ole Miss has a really talented group of wide receivers, and they've got a much better back than last year with Kewan Lacey. They're the Missouri transfer. So he's got help, but look, he throws from a low profile. He's not the tallest quarterback in the world. Georgia's going to try to knock a lot of passes down, disrupt him sort of in the pocket, and he's going to have to manage that. He's going to have to move well in the pocket. Right at tight end. Their wide receiver group as a whole, I think, can really make some plays. But Chambliss protecting the football, using his feet effectively, that's what's going to kind of get it for Ole Miss if they're going to be in this game late and have a chance to win. It's Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss do an excellent job with the quarterbacks. They've sort of found a way to mature Trinidad Chambliss very quickly, and this is going to be another step, but he has shown the ability. They were very good against a much more talented than Georgia LSU defense.
You look at it from the Georgia perspective, traditionally, when Georgia's defenses under Kirby Smart have had issues, it's with dual threat guys, and they understand that Trinidad Chambliss fits that mold. I think that they go into this game, really, I think it's more on the secondary trying to shut this Ole Miss passing game down. I think that they're willing to let Trinidad Chambliss make some plays with his legs, obviously not let him run wild, but the thing that the two parts of this Georgia defense that have been the most vulnerable, the areas that they need the most improvement, pass rush, really struggled to get after quarterbacks. I mean, the Alabama game was a prime example. Just couldn't get to Ty Simpson, and he took advantage of that. And then the secondary has given up a lot more explosive plays than we've seen in years past, the Tennessee game being a prime example of that. So they understand Trinidad can extend plays, maybe scramble off on his own a few times as well. But I think that they would be content letting him have some of those rushing yards if it means preventing the big explosive plays. I think if the more of those that Ole Miss gets, the better chance they have of winning this one on the road.
Both of you know this already. Anytime you have a game this late in the season and it's a top 10 matchup, it can mean anything when it comes to the CFP. We're dealing with a 9-5 team here. So obviously a win or loss affects either team. But Jordan, what does a win or loss do for the Dogs here?
Well, looking at it from the win perspective, I honestly don't know that it does much, but that's mostly because of what's left on Georgia's schedule. They'll have a bye week after Ole Miss. They'll go to Jacksonville and play Florida, who isn't not really in the playoff picture anymore, but that defensive line, I mean, the defense, especially for Florida, it's totally possible that Florida could win that game. You go to Mississippi State. Tennessee saw a few weeks ago how dangerous it can be to have to play in Starkville. Texas hanging around and looking a lot better after that win against Oklahoma. And then just to cap it off, you're playing a Georgia Tech team that, at this point is undefeated. Even if they've taken a couple losses, will still be in the mix there. So at this point with Georgia beating Ole Miss, obviously that's big top 5 win, and you kind of get revenge from last year's loss in Oxford. But you're kind of just treading water. That's just sort of where the SEC stands right now, and specifically with who Georgia has left. This doesn't guarantee anything for Georgia, but if you lose this game on the other side, you're kind of working your way uphill because you've got a lot of big battles and big challenges left on the schedule.
If we're operating under an SEC team getting in at 10-2, I kind of see these two games for Ole Miss at Georgia, at Oklahoma, back-to-back weeks as a group. If they win both of them, they're obviously going to the college football playoff. If they lose both of them, they still can hold serve at home. Lane Kiffin's 18-1 in his last 19 at home. They finish up the rivalry game there in Starkville, where Ole Miss has had a lot of recent success. Even the Bulldogs are playing harder and a little better under Jeff Lebby this year. But if you go even 1-1, that gives you a little room for error somewhere down the line. Florida can get you. Ole Miss saw that last year. South Carolina is capable with Lenora Sellers. The schedule sets up really well if Ole Miss just finds a way for one of these next two. And, look, if they get even one, I think they're a team that still would be in contention for Atlanta, and they'd be in great shape for the college football playoff. So they don't have to look far. Georgia lost in Oxford last year, still made the college football playoffs. It was very capable, went to Atlanta, all those things. So, look, history shows you don't have to win this game, but it's a great opportunity for Ole Miss, and I really do. I see these two sort of together where as long as Ole Miss doesn't go 0-2, they're pretty set up well to make the playoff and to finish up the season on a good note.
Speaking of setting things up, Lane Kiffin, he's been getting a lot of attention every year, it seems, especially when it comes to program job openings out there. The way you combat that if you're a program, extension talk. Of course, his current deal, 2029 here, he just got paid, or Kurt Cignetti just got paid. Chance that happens here where we're talking, Chase?
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is already working on some type of extension for Lane Kiffin. They want to lock him up. He's the perfect fit for the Rebels, perfect fit for Oxford. You saw the documentary that came out recently and the way that he's even become more ingrained in the town. I know Florida everybody's going crazy over Lane Kiffin, but I do expect Ole Miss to have some news at some point fairly soon. I don't know the exact date, but I know they're working on that. I expect Lane Kiffin to go beyond his current $9 million a year salary to move up in the top 10. And I do expect that to get announced before the carousel really heats up after the season. I do.
Yeah, he's probably looking at 11.6 and saying, hey, I've been doing pretty good in the SEC when it comes to Ole Miss. Just don't forget about me down the road. All right, I want to get some of those game picks. And Jordan, you have first word.
I'm picking Georgia to win this one 28-20. I think it's going to be a 4-quarter game. And to me, at the end of the day, why I picked Georgia is Georgia's run game versus Ole Miss's run defense. Just looking at the Rebels this year, everything they've accomplished to this point, to me, their weakest link is stopping the run. And that's really music to Georgia's ears with how they played this year. They've been at their best when they've gotten Chauncey Bowens, Nate Frazier, Cash Jones, Josh McCray running the football. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Georgia try to come out. They're going to have some explosive passes. They're going to let Gunnar Stockton throw the ball, but I think they would be totally fine keeping it on the ground, trying to run for about 250 yards. I think this is going to be a close game, but Georgia winds up pulling this one off, just covers that spread, and gets a little bit of revenge from last year's loss on the road.
We see it pretty similar ways. I think I picked Ole Miss 31-20 earlier in the week. Georgia 31-20 earlier in the week in our content item. I'm kind of with Jordan here. I think that Georgia's going to run the football some. Ole Miss is not as good in the front seven defensively as last year. And when you're Trinidad Chambliss in this first road start, I just like the home team because when he has to start matching scores, you don't know what you're going to get there. So, look, it's a winnable game for Ole Miss, but I do like the home team to hold serve for the third year in a row. I like Georgia to make one more play, cause one more turnover, and probably even cover this spread that I think is sitting at 7.5 right now.
If that's the case, again, another L when it comes since 1996 between the hedges and Athens when it comes to Ole Miss. We'll see how it pans out on Saturday at 3:30. Chase and Jordan, appreciate your time tapping in on giving us that preview. Don't forget, of course, when it comes to all thing on Saturday, we're taking our talents to Wisconsin, Madison. Well, not me, but Emily Proud and the crew, per usual. The college football pregame show with #1 Atlanta, Ohio State. Heading that way on Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Also, Brian Tully heading that way. See you there.